We'll start off episode 4 at the commission. It's not the commission that either Five or Lila remember. They start looking around for Herb, but all they find is a video. In it, you see Herb yelling that there's been a rift in the space-time continuum. It's swallowing everything. Herb then says this is the end, and he also disappears. While Five doesn't get any more answers, he doesn't really need them. He tells Lila this is way bigger than the timeline. This is the entire universe. It's basically the opposite of the Big Bang. Instead of the universe expanding, it's now collapsing on itself. Hope isn't lost, though. Layla was able to find the Master Handbook, and in it, it states that in the event of a grandfather paradox, the founder and any essential personnel will be immediately put in the operations bunker. So they head off, looking for it. They end up finding it all the way in the basement. The only problem is they can't get in. There's a retinal scan, and it doesn't accept Lila. But Five has been noticing that he's been going through paradox psychosis. He's starting to show signs. So he decides to take a stab at the retinal scan, and it works. The door opens up, and it's a pretty nice room, but it only has one person in it, and they're being kept alive by this tank. It's this old, wizened guy. He's the founder, although nor Lila or Five have ever met this guy. And through their first impression, they're not very impressed. But that's when Five realizes that he was going through paranormal psychosis because the founder is himself, all grown up on death's door. Lila starts laughing because the whole time he's been complaining about the commission and he's the one who invented the damn thing. Five has no recollection of this, but it appears that way. The founder explains to both of them that he constructed that room as a panic room, just in case of a collapse in the time continuum. And he realizes they must be there because of something called the Kugelblitz. The Kugelblitz is that orb-like figure in the basement of the Sparrow Academy. In a nutshell, it's a black hole, but a really special one. One that seemingly can't be fixed. Because when they ask the founder, he starts laughing, and he says, "You don't fix it." The founder is having a really tough time breathing at this point, but he does tell them, all that will be left is oblivion, the same word that Reginald used. Lila leans on the tank, and it ends up opening up. They're then able to see the full magnitude of what happened to older Five. He's got no arms. He's old as hell. He does have a tattoo. He's got that going for him. But, yeah, it's not painting a pretty picture. Five is frustrated, and he starts yelling at the founder, asking how to fix this thing. But the founder's only answer is, whatever you do, don't save the world. And then he dies. Five then asks to have the room with his former dead self, and he decides to take a souvenir. He cuts out the tattoo. Now, over with Five's brothers and sisters, Klaus shows up right as the fight ends. Perfect timing. He figures that it was Victor, but then he's surprised when everybody's looking at this old dude. Harlan doesn't quite know what to do, so he runs away. Victor goes after him. When Sloane wakes up, she looks over and sees her dead brothers and sisters. She's mortified, so she runs away. Luther, Diego, and Allison go after her. They chase her all the way into the showers, and she starts thinking that Luther set her up the whole time, even though he didn't. But as she's levitating Luther up, Diego grabs her from the back and holds a knife to her throat. If she had any doubts whatsoever that Luther set her up, they go out the window because Luther starts yelling at Diego to let her go. She had nothing to do with it, and vowing to put him in the grave if he even harms her. They don't harm her, though. Allison just makes her talk, using her "I heard a rumor" power. Although Allison takes it way too far. When it becomes clear that Sloane has no idea about the whereabouts of the briefcase or even that it existed, Allison continues to try to use her powers until eventually Sloane is bleeding from the nose. They finally let Luther take Sloane upstairs, still kind of holding her as a hostage. But there's an unnerving trend with Allison. She's become angrier, way more on edge, and she even goes into the bathroom and uses the "I heard a rumor" trick on herself. Fighting through it the whole time, but saying, "I heard a rumor you were happy." Yeah, she's not in a good state. She smashes the mirror, takes a shard of the glass, cuts her hair off, and walks outside to see Victor talking to Harlan. Harlan has learned how to talk after all these years, and he tells Victor a little bit of his backstory. They moved around constantly after Victor left them, changing their name to the Pocket family. But everywhere they were at didn't last too long because Harlan couldn't harness his powers. Even till this day, he can't harness his powers all that well. He really wasn't built for this. He decided to go move out in the woods, but when they returned, he felt something. It was like a tuning fork. He had to follow it. Because when Victor saved Harlan, she created like a connection between the two that he could constantly feel. So Allison interrupts the trip down memory lane to let Victor know that the Sparrows never had the briefcase. This is yet another blow in their attempt to just get back. Victor tells Allison she'll deal with it later, and her and Harlan head up to the room to continue to get caught up. He tells Victor that his mother never blamed Victor for leaving them. She always thought one day that Victor would come back, and she never gave up hope. It's really Harlan the one who kind of blames Victor because he needed her in that moment. Victor tells him they figured Harlan would be better off with Victor not around, but in hindsight, he wishes he stayed. Luther then walks in and tells Victor that there's a meeting downstairs, family only. But as Victor and Harlan were getting caught up and enjoying some quality time together, so was Klaus and Stanley. After finding out exactly where Klaus was, Diego ends up pawning off Stanley on Klaus. Stanley's going to have to clean the hotel for damages to it, and he needs a babysitter. Klaus doesn't really do anything, so Diego figured that Klaus could look after him. At first, they're hesitant to buy in, but after spending a little bit of time together, it's clear that Stanley and Klaus actually like each other. They surprisingly have a lot in common. But Klaus is not going to be able to make that family meeting. As they're going room to room cleaning it, there's one room called the White Buffalo Suite, and even though it's not on the list to be cleaned, Klaus decides to break on into it. Klaus, having stayed at the hotel, might want to check it out for nostalgia purposes. When they get inside, Klaus is transfixed on the white buffalo head that is mounted to the wall. Reginald had a painting of a white buffalo in his office that is very similar. He starts walking around. Then he says, all right, let's hurry up, Stanley. We got to go see a man about a white buffalo. But when he turns around, Stanley shoots him through the chest with a spear. Complete accident, but it ends up killing Klaus. Klaus's brother and sister have no idea about this because they're in the family meeting. And the family meeting was called by Luther because him and Sloan have come up with a plan to let Sloan go as an olive branch. Sloan will take the bodies back, and once she is back, she'll convince the Sparrow Academy that Harlan wasn't with them and the Umbrella Academy had nothing to do with that guy. Tensions are still pretty high, and the real question is Harlan with them or not? While he wasn't initially, after saving their lives, the Umbrella Academy is inclined to say, yeah, he's with us. But that kind of screws up the whole Sloan going back to the Sparrow Academy and saying that guy wasn't with them. They also start questioning Luther's loyalty because he's clearly sleeping with the enemy, but it's Victor who steps in and reminds everybody that having somebody on the inside could help. At the end of it, Allison storms out, Diego follows her, while Luther and Victor call it the Sparrow Academy to do the trade-off. And poor Sloan doesn't realize what a fractured house she's walking back into. There's a real strife between Ben and Faye. Ben and Faye are convinced that the Umbrella Academy is going to come back and finish them off, and they need to come up with a plan, but Ben doesn't really consult Faye on the plan. So when Sloan is handed over in a back alley, Ben demands that Victor and Luther hand over Harlan as well. Victor yells, that's not a part of the deal, and even Sloan comes to their defense and says they have nothing to do with that guy. But Ben shoots back, well, if he wasn't working with them, they won't care about handing him over. He then looks right at Victor and Luther and says, this is simple. Bring us the man who killed our siblings, and this will all be over. If not, well, and then he gets in the car and heads back. Now, Alice and Diego, they weren't a part of the trade-off. Diego, recognizing that there's something going on with his sister, chased after her to find out what it is. Allison tells him that since losing Ray and Claire, her daughter, she doesn't really know where to put any of this anger she has, and it's festering. The two really have a nice heart-to-heart, but Diego finds a place for Allison to take out that pent-up frustration. It's a bar that is proudly supporting a Confederate flag, so they had it coming. Back at the hotel, with Victor gone, Harlan got bored in the room. He decided to leave and start looking for Victor, and he walks into Victor's room only to find all the newspaper clippings about their dead mom. And for whatever reason, he starts getting enraged about it. As he starts walking back to his room, Victor shows up and asks, what are you doing? And he shows Victor the news clippings and asks him, what are you doing with this? Victor asks him, do you know them? And then Harlan grabs Victor's shoulder, and since there is a connection between the two, he allows Victor to see the past. Turns out Sissy died the exact day the Umbrella Academy was supposed to be born, and the exact day all of their mothers died. And all of their mothers died because of Harlan. When Sissy passed away, he let out that scream. But it didn't just stay contained in the hospital. One by one, it picked off all of their mothers. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry. It'll be up in a day or two.